a general environment. Some books would call them as business environment. Okay. So these are among the general environmental factors that has been identified, all right, to have an impact on the organization, either it's on the profitability of the organization or sustainability of organization, right? Basically, these are the elements that actually have impact on the organization that comes from outside, right? Not within the organization, but comes from outside. Remember that I mentioned to you in the previous class, for you to analyze whether that particular factors is actually external or internal, it depends on the context. All right. When I say context, are you looking at your department or are you looking at the business as a whole? If you're looking at the narrow aspect of your department, anything within your department is internal, anything outside your department is external. So when it comes to application-wise, okay, when it comes to application-wise, it means that you need to look into the context. Is the case talking about just one particular small unit, okay, analyzing a small unit or analyzing the whole of the organization? So when you are focusing on a small unit, that means your unit is considered as that particular organization. So anything within your unit is internal, anything outside your unit is external. As you go and grow bigger, you are talking, and if you are analyzing your division, then anything within the division is internal, anything outside division will be external. Talking about the whole company, then anything within the company is internal and anything outside the company is external. All right, I hope you understand that particular context. When I say context, you need to read the case carefully. All right, what are they addressing? What are the issues that they are addressing there? And when I say impact, impact can be on profitability, impact can be on the sustainability, and sometimes in a big broader aspect, if you are looking at the triple bottom line, okay, you may look into three aspects, all right? Impact on the profitability, impact on the people, all right? Impact on the planet. Okay, some would say planet as environment, all right? Some would say people as social. Some would say, when we talk about profitability, definitely we are talking about financial, all right? So all these are the terms, okay? Alternate terms being used to represent, okay, the profitability and sustainability of the organization. So these are the factors that has been identified. Okay, what are they? Demographic factors, social cultural factors, political and legal, technological, economic, and global. These are the general environment that can affect your organization that comes from outside. Remember, look at what they mentioned here. They are hard to predict and difficult to control. Why? It's outside. So when it is in this particular situation, you're talking about difficult to predict, just like the pandemic that actually affect us. Those are the general environment that can actually affect a business anytime. Whether it is COVID-19 or other types of pandemic, surely it has an impact on an organization. Anything outside that has an impact on the organization is actually considered as general environment. Okay, so these are the one that has been identified. I'm not saying that these are the only general environment, but these are the factors that has been identified: demographic, social, cultural, political, legal, technological, economic, and global. All right. Pandemic can fall under these particular global issues. All right. And why it is significant for you to understand this, because these are the elements that's quite difficult for you to control. But I'm not saying that you can't actually manage it. Even though you cannot control it, but at least you can manage them. All right. So you need to be agile enough for you to be able to cater for this particular influence. Okay, when I say agile, okay, I'm talking about you are ready to actually face that particular circumstances, and you are able to actually think of a way to overcome that particular circumstances that comes from these particular factors. Any questions so far?
No, madam.
All right. Okay, so the first part here is the demographic segment. Okay, if you still remember, the first general factors is actually demographic. So basically, demographic is quite easy for you to actually understand them and quantify them. Okay, what are the example of demographic factors and how it would actually influence or have impact on your organization? What's given here is that it says that aging population can have impact on your business, rising of affluence, changes in ethnic composition, geographic distribution of population, greater disparities in income levels. And all these are some of the elements that has been identified in detail, okay, in terms of the components of demographic factors that can have influence or impact on your organization. How does it work? And how do you look at this as something that can have an impact on your organization? You need to do a little bit of critical and analytical thinking here and blending in the logical reasoning behind it. If you have a business, how would aging population affect your business? Before you answer that, right? Before you answer that, the first thing that you need to see is what's the nature of your business? All right? What's the nature of your business? If the nature of your business is very much affected by age, all right, then it may have an impact on the profitability and sustainability of your organization. Why do I say that? How would age affect a business? Give some examples. Let's have some discussion here.
Production boleh slow sebab dah tua sangat.
Okay, apa relationship dengan production dengan tua? Siapa yang tua that you are referring here to?
Worker.
Okay.
When you say workers, all right, when you say workers, you can look at this from two perspectives. I'm not saying you are wrong, all right? I'm not saying you are wrong, but it can be understood in two ways. When you look from the perspective of internal, all right, if your workers are getting older and older, there might be some influence on the productivity. One. But if you are looking from this particular demographic segment that comes from outside the company, it means that I'm not looking at the workers inside, but I'm looking at the population outside the organization. Let's say your company or your organization is situated in an area where there are aging population. That means the society who stays around your factory, for example, are all age 50 above. You don't have youngsters staying there. How would it influence your organization? It might be difficult for you to find people who will work with you. Okay, and that's how it would affect the profitability in your organization. This is how you are going to look at it from the external factors. And I'm not saying that you are wrong by looking at the workers, but if you twist a bit, okay, the way that you answer it from the external perspective, then we are talking about the source of labor that you might have will be decreasing because of why? Because the population that's within the vicinity of your factory are actually coming from aging population. So you don't have people who are strong enough or are young enough to work for your organization for a long period. Okay? That's how you look at it from the external perspective. I'm not saying what you said is wrong, that yes, workers are getting older. But if you look from it from the perspective of internal factors, which we will touch later on, right? Then we can talk about the manpower within your organization that are not getting younger, all right? So in that sense, the level of productivity might decrease because of this particular aging population within your organization. Can you see the difference between both?
Yes, madam.
Yes, madam.
Right? So be careful with the same point. All right, with the same point, you can actually explain it from both perspectives. The aging population is the point that you have just now. But if you want to explain it from the demographic and external environment, that is the general environment, then you will be explaining it from the perspective of outside the organization. So you can explain it as part of the source of employment, okay, workers. But if you're looking at it from the internal perspective, then you can talk about the workers and the level of productivity that can impact the organization. Satu, source of labor, you don't have them, and that's why your productivity decrease. Satu lagi, your productivity decreases not because of just source of labor, but the labor that you have already, the level of the productivity decrease because they are getting older. What will be other impact that you can see from here is that, right, when you employ older people who have lots of experience into your organization, okay, you might have to actually pay more. You see, that's how it affects your profitability. Your cost can be higher because of the experience that the workers have. And when they have that experience, they are more knowledgeable in the areas that they are doing, they will be paid higher. Higher cost, profitability decrease. All right. But in another context, you can also, you see, you can twist and turn these points by referring it to both internal and external. But the way that you are going to explain it will be slightly different with a little bit of a twist, okay, in terms of your sentence. Any question? Any question?
Madam, yang aging population ni kalau external boleh ke effect kalau target market banyak sangat orang tua?
Can?
Boleh.
How? This why I kata it depends on your nature of business. Other nature of business are not affected at all by the aging population. right? It might be affected by other types of demographic elements. It can be rising affluence, it can be changes in ethnic composition, all right? It can be from whatever that's being given here, geographic distribution of population. Sometimes it can also be, when we talk about demographic, the location where the people are staying. It can also have influence on your nature of business. Rising affluence means we are talking about the wealth that people have. Can also have an influence on your organization. That's why I say you need to understand how to demarcate. I mean to differentiate, okay? How to demarcate between how aging population can have an impact on your organization from external perspective and from the internal perspective. If you are able to differentiate between these two, you boleh goreng je the rest of the areas. Sometimes, this I can say, it goes back to what? What's your nature of business? Online business, I would say. All right, when you talk about online transaction, if let's say you are in the area where you open up an online transaction, all right, you have the online business, high chances that when you look at your customers, if let's say you're surrounded by aging population, high chances that you may still need a physical store in that particular area. Okay, because the number of your customers may not come within that area. It may come from outside because of that online just now. But what about the people within your area? How are they going to get their supplies if you don't have a physical store? For example, a supermarket. Don't expect that the older generation who are not born in the technological era would be purchasing from you online. But there are other ways that you can actually use to develop the market that you have there. How? This way you need to look at the context. If you are a supermarket, you operate a supermarket, remember those within the areas, okay, the demographic areas that you have, okay, they are all aging populations. Aging populations, perhaps, they don't know how to use technology much, but at least they know how to make a call. So for example, in that particular area, okay, maybe phone number is very important for them to call if they want something, instead of using the internet and order. All right, so that's the reason why you need to understand who are around you. Because why? Your marketing strategy will not be the same for each of the market segment that you have. Same goes to rising affluence. We are talking about, okay, the rich and the poor, or in those particular areas. If you are located in an area where there are less people with wealth, can you actually sell higher price? No, you can't do that. But if you are surrounded with people, okay, with people with wealth, okay, abundance of wealth, perhaps the kind of price that you might have there will be different. You see, so that's how it influences the way that you do your business. So same goes to the rest of the points that you have here. I hope you can see that. Social cultural, for example, all right? Sometimes we're talking about what? Values, beliefs, and the lifestyle of the society. It does influence the way you do your business. It does influence the kind of products that you are going to actually sell. And when we are talking about in the context of the era of pandemic, how would you think, okay, the socio-cultural would have, okay, social cultural factors or forces would have on the business? These are some of the examples being given here. If you ask me, I will usually, okay, you can actually blend these two together. Demographic and social cultural forces. What's happening? Oh dear. Mana I punya slides? Are you all here?
Yes,
Yes.
I takut
Yes,
macam
madam.
hilang line. Ke I rasa macam tak ada pegang apa-apa. Okay. What will happen? Okay, you can actually explain. I cannot blame you. Okay, one thing about strategic management is that it is quite difficult sometimes for you to actually explain one particular point with another point, because sometimes these two points need to be explained together. It's okay, all right, because most of it are interrelated. So you don't have to worry about that. So if I were you in this particular context, okay, even though in this particular slides that you have, the demographic and social cultural factors or forces are being actually highlighted differently, right? However, these two are related. Okay, that's where it's related. Just for example, aging population that you have just now definitely will have, okay, will be related to the third point that you have here. This one. Definitely will be related to this. As you grow older, all right, you need to take care of your health. Okay, as you grow older, you need to take care of your health. And when it comes about, okay, taking care of your health, we are talking about the influence to your nature of business. How are these two related? How do you think the kind of business that may be related to these two elements? Can you highlight that one? And can you discuss on that one?
Pharmacy.
Sat. I kena tutup pintu dulu. I kat office ni. Everybody is like knocking. Itulah susahnya dekat office ni. Alright. Come, let's discuss on this one. I want you to see the link between these two. If you are not able to see it, the connection is quite difficult for you to actually explain later on. How would it influence?
Kalau jual fast food, madam, kalau kawasan tu ramai yang aging population kan, yang dah tua, maybe tak laku.
Betul? True. And you don't blame for apa? You don't blame them for your collapse. All right? You can't blame why? Because you yourself, when you open up that particular fast food restaurant, why didn't you, do some market survey, basically? If you want to open up a restaurant in that particular area where there are more aging population, and definitely aging population will be related to this lifestyle of healthy diets and physical fitness. So definitely you hardly could see these people coming to your store and buy the food. I'm not saying that they are not eating it, but they do, but it's only once in a while. But if we are talking about, okay, a lot of younger generations in that particular area, yes, fast food restaurant would actually make a lot of money. As simple as the area that I'm staying now, where there are a lot of younger generations, buying houses near my area. Okay, and they have small children. Okay, those are the kind of population that we have. So this kind of populations, definitely when you have a McDonald's there, it will be full most of the time, especially when lunch and dinner. And you see cars queuing, okay, nak go through the drive-thru tu, daripada highway Guthrie sampailah masuk ke dalam McDonald's tu. That's how, okay, it influence the business there. Okay, so if we are talking about older generation, let's say that a particular area ramai orang macam my age, for example, okay, perhaps I wouldn't, if you ask me, I don't quite go to fast food as my age getting, nak kata older apa, getting wiser, okay, alright. So as we grow older, okay, as our age getting, catching up, we tend to go to this fast food restaurant lesser and lesser. I will go there if my children are back, basically. Okay? If they're home, then once in a while, yes, I will entertain them, then I will go to this particular fast food. But if you're talking about the nature of business, okay, talking about demographic and social cultural, definitely these are the kind of influence that you can see on your business. So you need to connect them, one element to another element. What about this? Political and legal segment. This is very obvious as what's happening now, all right? Especially ministries of health rules and regulations on SOP. It does influence your nature of business. How would it influence your nature of business? Ramanya you auto keluar masuk balik ni. Right.
Tax, madam.
Tax, yeah. Lagi? These are some of the example. The actual example that we are facing now is what? With all the SOPs, when the government says, especially the Ministry of Health says what? Every business must ensure that they abide to the standard operating procedures to fight COVID-19. How does it influence and has an impact on your organization? First, it has an impact definitely on your profitability, obviously, but if you break it down, how would it affect on your profitability? One is on the cost. The cost that you never incur before, like sanitizers. What else?
Ini macam gelas penghadang dekat kaunter tu.
Yes, okay. The I would say that particular divider, kan? The glass divider. You tak pernah fikir pasal tu before this, but you have to incur that particular cost. Remember, some of the costs are one-off, but some of the costs are recurring in nature. That's how it affects your business. You will be impacted through two aspects of cost: capital expenditure and revenue expenditure. What else? When it comes to sanitizers and all those particular daily procedures, okay, all these sanitizer sprays, they are recurring in nature. Habis beli. These are the additional costs that they have to incur. What else do you think that they have to incur?
Check temperature.
Yes, checking the temperature, and definitely they have to continuously what? Invest on the thermometer. If it's frequently used, the thermometer doesn't last long. All right? It depends on what type that you are buying. So perhaps occasionally you have to change. Kalau you tak change the thermometer pun, you need to what? Replenish the battery. Isn't it? So battery thermometer tu dah becomes what? Your recurring expenditure. So you have additional expenditures. So this is how political or legal can actually have an impact on your organization. Some would affect you only, some would affect all businesses. When it comes to the rules of SOP fighting COVID-19, it affects all nature of business. Yeah, almost all the nature of business. But when it comes to, all right, rules by the Ministry of Health pertaining to food preparation, this will only affect business who are selling food and beverages. You see, only certain nature of business are affected. It doesn't affect all. So that's where you have to be very careful, okay, in the context of identifying the influence of these particular factors on the business, especially not just business, on your organization. When we talk about why do I focus on organization? Remember, strategy is not only for profit-making organization. Strategy is also for non-profit organization as well. Okay, regardless the nature of your organization, okay, you will actually be affected by these particular external factors. So it depends on what kind of case being given to you. So that's where you have to be very, very careful in that sense. Would this particular political effect, all right, and any influence, okay, how would political affect your internal operations? This is what I say, it doesn't just affect profitability. Bila I kata profitability tu termasuklah you punya proses legislation, operation procedures inside your organization, people, all right, and the planet, environment. Why does it affect the environment as well? Sustainability. It does. How would it affect it? Tax definitely will affect your organization. Everyone has got to pay tax. But again, remember what kind of tax. Not all tax will affect everyone. Income tax definitely. All right. Company income tax definitely will actually affect those in business. But sometimes, okay, it doesn't affect certain types of organization. Okay, certain types of organization do not have to pay tax. Any question on this one?
Madam,
Yeah.
macam mana dengan loan moratorium tu?
Okay. How would that particular moratorium affect your nature of business? When we talk about moratorium, okay, they are talking about what? They are putting on hold your payment. All right. How would it affect a business is that, okay, if your business do have cars that are being used for business purposes, right? Cars, any vehicles, I would say, that are used for business purposes. Definitely you have monthly installments. Okay, what they're trying to do here is that they're trying to put a break in terms of you paying for that particular month, all right? So that you'll be able to have that particular additional cash for that month for other things. And if you are brilliant enough to take advantage of that particular situation, what will happen is that, but moratorium, when we talk about moratorium, remember, even if that you are not paying for 6 months, remember, they are extending your payment of loans for another 6 months, basically. That's how it affects your business. But if you are smart enough, whatever money that you can actually save during that particular 6 months period that you don't have to pay for the loan, if you are able to invest and get the return, okay, within that particular 6 months using the money that you save, then you can take advantage of that particular moratorium. Okay, some would do that, some may not. So the impact will be different for each and every of the organization. And that's where leadership plays an important role. Remember, we talked about leadership previously? And that's where leadership plays an important role. Leaders who can see this, the implications of this environment towards the organization and able to act on it, all right? The reaction is by taking actions on it, they will be able to survive. Or they might, if they are not able to actually take actions against it, they might collapse. So that's where leadership plays an important role. And you must always be critical and analytical to find solutions for every impact, if any. And that's why, right, in the context of business environment, it needs, these particular factors need to be monitored quite frequently. It may not affect you now, it might affect you later. It may be affecting you good now, but it might affect you later. But moratorium, be careful. Okay, even if you are not paying for this particular 6 months, doesn't mean that they are getting rid of this particular profit of theirs, especially the banks. First thing that they do when you start paying is they akan ambil dia punya profit dulu before you, they will deduct whatever that the principal of the loan that you are going to take. Can you see that? Are you okay with that? Any question? Okay,
Yes,
are you
madam.
clear?
Clear, madam.
All right. This definitely will affect you. These are affecting all of us. It is affecting us, especially when you talk about education segment. They are very much affected by this technology as well. And this technology comes into the picture because of another factors that came into the picture that affects the global scenario, which was the pandemic. But even if without this particular global scenario, the pandemic expedite the use of technology, basically, right? Why? If not, I don't think so. We would be, using ODL now. But the pandemic actually expedite the use of technology, whether we like it or not, by hook or by crook. All right, we need to embark into this particular use of technology. And that's the reason how it will affect, especially education segment, is that classes are no longer run face-to-face. In fact, now, classes are run online, regardless where you are. So there are influence, okay, due to this particular technological development as well. What else? Because of that particular technological development, you see that, okay, there are a lot of platforms emerging for the purpose of education. All right, people start to create platforms for the use in education. Okay, and when you talk about market segments in education, there are what? those in preschools, okay, the platform for preschool education, there are platforms for primary school education, there are platforms for universities and for working people as well. So how would it affect your business? Definitely it will affect your business in many ways. So these are some of the examples, okay, that actually is happening now that are affecting us as well. So for business who actually envelop this particular technological influence positively, would be able to benefit from this particular technological advancement, especially with the use of big data. What are big data? We'll talk about it in detail later on. The use of big data allows a business to understand their prospect better, especially the market. All right. So if you want to see how it influenced certain businesses, you look at how it influenced your shopping. You baru je cari benda tu on the website, all right? Suddenly the advertisement appear in your Instagram and in your Facebook. You see, how are they able to capture your movement? So that's how they are able to capture your movement. A single click will tell everyone what you are doing. Okay, so basically that's how it would actually influence your activities. And if you notice that when you buy online and when you purchase one element, and then they will recommend you to actually look at other products as well. How are they able to do that? Because they're studying your behavior, your purchasing behavior through your transaction online. So basically that's how it influences your business. Would it have any impact on your profitability? Definitely. Would it have an impact on the process or the people within your organization? Definitely. Would it has an impact on the sustainability? Definitely. It's all depending on whether you can accept and use the technology or you can't. This is what we meant by disruption. Okay. When we talk about digital disruption, okay, it can be positively taken, it can be negative. It can also have negative impact as well. Okay, it's all depending on how the business manage it. Any question? Any question?
No question, madam.
All right. Okay, another one will be economic segment. Okay, we are sometimes, okay, especially when we talk about businesses who have got international connections and, you know, running business globally, definitely, okay, exchange rate can have an influence on your business as well. How would it affect you? Sometimes you may think of, you know, revising your transaction with your suppliers, especially when your suppliers are overseas suppliers. Sometimes you may resort to looking at suppliers where the exchange rate is actually lower or higher. It depends on which position that you are in. All right. So this particular increase in terms of Economic factors in terms of exchange rate is one of those particular elements under the economic forces. You can also have interest rates as well that can have influence, especially now interest is not good. Why? Why do you think that now things are getting more expensive? Unemployment is also getting higher. But again, you have to be very careful when you analyze the situation in the case. Are they being affected by the economic situation positively or negatively? Okay, this is something that you need to actually scrutinize. I cannot say that all interests will have negative impact on your organization. It may not be on certain organization, it may be on certain organizations. Okay. Any question? Yeah.
Maksudnya tak semestinya efek tu efek negatif lah kan?
Yes. Bila, okay, ini selalu students students selalu assume that bila people talk about implication, mesti negatif. Motivation, always positive, but not necessarily. Motivation as well can be looked at positively or negatively as well. Implication can also be looked at positively and negatively. That's where we go wrong. All right? Like what you said is correct. Implication can be positive. It can be negative. Don't forget about that. So this is what we have discussed just now, the relationships among elements. And that's the reason why you cannot actually explain, kalau in reality, it's quite difficult for you to actually explain all those particular environmental factors, okay, in isolation. It's quite difficult. As we talk about strategic management, you are not able to actually explain things in isolation. Do you understand what I mean by in isolation? Kids, can you hear me? Do you understand what it means by in isolation? That means you are not able to actually explain it on an individual factors per se, or most of the factors are connected. All right, that's where you have to be very, very careful. Like what you say here, talking about technology, but the effect can be both on economics and global relationship. You see, demographic can have influence on economic as well. So that's where you need to be aware of what's going on around you.
Madam.
Yeah. Yes. Apa nak tanya soalan tadi? Ada nak tanya? Before I move on to the competitive environment.
Ada.
Ada ke tak ada soalan ni? Tadi macam I dengar panggil madam tu, I ingatkan ada lah you nak tanya soalan.
Tak ada, madam.
Okay, alright. So basically, when it comes to this competitive environment, like I mentioned to you, just now we are talking about what? Broader environment, anything outside there. Now we are narrowing it down to competitive environment. Environment that are relevant to the industry that you are in. Okay? The environment that you are in now is that are related to your nature of operation or nature of business or nature of activities. These are your competitive environment, all right? So basically what you are looking at when we talk about this competitive environment is we are talking about how competitors would have an implication on your operation. How would customers have an implication against customers' activities would have on your organization, and your suppliers' activities would have on your organization. So we are getting narrower in terms of our context of factors now. And just now it's very broad. And now we are narrowing it down into something that are more related to the industry and the organization that you are in. All right. So when we talk about business, definitely we are talking about competitor. We are talking about customers. We are talking about suppliers. This can actually be modified, or this can also be assimilated in the context of an environment that is non-profit making as well. All right. For example, a charity organization, a non-profit organization, right? They do have their own competitors. Okay. They do have their own customers. Basically, their customers perhaps are not the one who buys from them, but their customers are those receiving the donations given by people. Suppliers can be those in the profit making. We're talking about raw materials or the goods that you are actually used to make products, or the goods that you purchase to resell it. But in a context of an environment where the profit is not your focus, suppliers can be whom? Suppliers can be your source of funding. Okay? Those giving donations are considered as supplier in that particular context. All right? So you need to be able to, I would say, adapt to the situation of your case when you are using this particular factors. Whether it's the general factors or competitive factors, all right? Try your best to understand it in the context. Students always ask that, Madam, how I'm going to use this particular competitive environment in the context of the company who is actually not making profit at all? It's a charity organization. Yes, try to adapt. Don't adopt. Adopt means you're taking pieces by pieces. The same thing be applied. But in the context of adapt, it means that you need to actually try to modify the context of competitors, okay, to answer the question in a non-profit organization. When we talk about competitor, doesn't mean it's always competing to get a profit, okay, to get a more profit. But we are talking about competing to get more people to donate, for example. All right. So donations, okay, from people, it depends on what activities that you are doing and the kind of assistance that you are giving to your customers who are the recipient of the assistance, and the kind of donations that you get, it depends on the suppliers just now. That means supplier in this context are the donator. Okay, you need to be able to actually adapt this in the context of different nature of organization. Because your question will be application. Okay, this is one of the models that you can actually use to help you understand, okay, the competitiveness of the business environment that you are in. Okay? The competitiveness of the industry that you are in as well. So basically, this is some of this. This is a model that can help you to analyze and things that you should look at when it comes to understanding whether the competition between the competitors is actually very strong or not. Do you have strong competitors? If you have strong competitors, it means that you are competing aggressively. Remember that we learned on competitive advantage, how you are going to sustain in the competitive advantage. Okay, competitive advantage is what? To get an average, to get an above average return. All right. So how do you fight with your competitor in order for you to gain the heart or win the heart of your customers? So you need to have all sorts of strategies. And what strategies that you are going to use is all depending how strong your competition is, right? So this is one of those particular model that can actually help you to analyze that level of competition just now. How strong is your fight with your competitor, all right? So one of the elements that you are going to look at will be potential entrants. Who is coming into that particular nature of business? Who are already inside this particular nature of business? Understand who are around you. And understand what are the possible threats that they can give to you. Especially if you are selling products or services, how are they able to actually steal, okay, the customers from you? This is what we mean by threat of substitute products or services. Instead of buying from you, they buy from the competitor. To what extent that, you know, how they actually steal from your market from you is in this particular context of a business. So when you understand that, you'll be able to create a mechanism that can actually stop your customers from running away from you. And that's why you need to understand what are the nature of threat, of substitute that these particular people around you is actually giving you. Okay, so when I say potential entrance, is some books would say new entrance, but again, it depends whether you are in the existing market, okay, or you want to enter into a new market, or someone else is entering into your market. All right, you need to understand that context first. Then you'll be able to actually use this particular model well. If you don't understand the context in terms of potential entrance, what they mean, then it's going to be quite difficult for you. I'm going to explain it here because in the coming slides, you're going to have it explained individually, but I'm going to explain all here, but you can read the rest of the slides, okay? Another thing that you need to actually look at will be in terms of the bias. You need to look at all these particular elements, but doesn't mean that all these particular elements apply in the context of the organizations that you are looking at. Don't fit the case into this particular model. You need to look at how this model, okay, does these elements in the model appear in the case or not? Sometimes in the case, you only have issues pertaining to potential entrance and bargaining power bias. They don't have suppliers, they don't have issues on substitutes. Sometimes they have all, but when they have all, which one is more severe that they have to address? So these are the kind of things that you need to look at. What does it mean by substitutes? These two, we are talking about threat of new entrants, threat of substitutes. All right. So basically, we are talking about threat of new entrants and threat of substitute in this particular context. All right. You talk about this too when you look at these 2 points. That's why bila you tengok ni is in this particular color. Alright? And then when you look into the bargaining power, you're talking about the buyers and the suppliers. We are looking into the bargaining power of suppliers and the buyers. Who is stronger? When you look at you yourself here, you have control over, as an organization, we're talking organization here, do you have control over the buyers or buyers have control over you? Same goes to this. Do you have control over the suppliers or the suppliers is exerting their power on you? So that's where you have to actually understand very well. All right. If let's say you only have certain types of customers only, and when customer push you to reduce the price, and if you don't, they will go to other supplier, okay, other seller, you're going to lose that customer. And if you don't have that customer, you're not going to have the business. So that means the buyer has power over you. So that means you have to listen to them very well. So if they ask you to reduce the price, and if you don't, they run away, you are not going to have any more customer. So you look into the extent of that particular influence or implications on you. All right, how would that affect your profitability? So that's where you need to come up with a mechanism to mitigate this particular bargaining powers. Same goes to supplier as well. Sometimes supplier can press on you, okay, or can suppress you basically in terms of the amount that they want to offer to you, especially talk about pricing. They exert higher price. Kalau supplier, normally they will try to exert upon you the higher price. I will offer to you only this amount. But again, it depends on the situation that you are in. Like I said, who is actually bigger? If you have a control on your supplier, for example, well, let's say you get your supplies from supplier A. If you have control over your supplier A and you understand the situation of your supplier A, then you can play around with them in a sense that, okay, if you know that supplier A only have you as their main customer, then you can actually have some power to manage this supplier in such that, okay, if you give me, okay, the amount that is higher, I will search for other suppliers. So once they know that, they will not be able to exert the high price on you. Again, there are situations where for that supplier, if you are one of the puny customers of theirs, say they don't care so much about you. If you don't buy from them, okay, if they exert higher price and you said, okay, it's too high, we cannot buy from you, and they don't care, then you're not going to benefit from that. Okay, but if they are in a situation whereby if you don't buy from them and they will face problem in terms of their profitability, definitely you can have some negotiation with them. All right. So basically, this is how you look at all this particular influence. When we talk about, okay, the substitute, the threat of substitute and the new entrance is actually very high, and you can actually feel how it affects your profitability. All right, same goes to the bargaining power. It means that the competition in this particular industry is very stiff. It is very strong. So you need to actually find a way how you can mitigate this situation by coming up with certain strategies to overcome these difficult situations. Competition is good. Why? Because it allows an organization to continuously improve and be better and better. If you don't have a competition, you tend to be complacent with what you have, right? So you don't really improve on that one. So your product may not be as good. So if there are competition, okay, you will try your best to be better than your competitor. So it will drive you to actually improve and improve. Any question on this one? Any question?
No, madam.
All right. When you look at the new entrants just now, all right, like I said, you dah tahu that the competitor is giving you a hard time, especially those coming into the business or from your existing competitor. If they're giving you the hard time, how are you able to continuously achieve or maintain your competitive advantage? One way for you to maintain your competitive advantage is by creating barrier to entry so that people cannot enter your boundary. You need to create that boundary, okay? Sort like a barrier so that they don't actually pinch your customers. You want to ensure that you will still be able to compete strongly with them, okay? So these are some of the examples that you can actually use for you to create that particular barrier to entry. All right, don't come in, I have this. If they come in, they will not survive because of this particular barrier that you have set. These are some of the examples, and the one in green are the one that normally relates to the strategy that we are going to actually look at after this. Economies of scale. Why do you actually go for this? What does it mean, economies of scale? As you produce the product more and more, your production cost gets lower and your selling price becomes lower. And when your selling price is lower, it's more attractive to your customers. And if you are able to maintain the quality, it's even much better. All right. So this will actually stop your competitor from competing with you. All right. Not a complete stop, but at least it can slow down the process of trying to actually penetrate or stealing your customers. It will slow down that particular process, right? I cannot say that it will stop completely. Remember, competitors will always find a way to actually penetrate into the market. Economies of scale is actually one of the type of strategy. One of the mechanism for you to ensure that your business strategy works. You will learn about the business strategy after this. All right, apa beza business strategy and the corporate strategy. Those are the strategies that actually help you to maintain your competitive advantage. You have product differentiation. That means instead of competing in terms of the cost, perhaps special features or qualities of your product can be something that you want to sell and which the competitor find it difficult to compete with you. All right, find it difficult to compete with you, and so at the end of the day, they will slow down in terms of the performing that particular business. So you'll be able to, perhaps maybe it will help you to be the market leader. So this is a way for you to get that barrier. Once you are able to create the barrier, high chances that you are able to sustain. But remember, competitive advantage needs to be maintained. All right? You cannot just allow one strategy to be used forever. The strategy needs to be revised and revisit most of the time. So same goes to the rest. Switching cost is actually one of the things that's very good as a barrier to entry in a way that, what does it mean by switching cost is that when your existing customer already purchased of you, from you, they find it like difficult to let you go and switch to other people's product. That's the thing that you want to create. You want them to hold on to your product and not switching to others. So when they switch to others, their cost of switching will be very high. And when we talk about that switching cost, high cost, it may not just be monetary. It can be in other form as well. All right? So basically, these are the kind of things that you will need to understand when it comes to creating barrier to entry. I've covered this with you just now about the bargaining power of the buyers, all right? So you need to understand, okay, who are your buyers and how powerful they are. So these are some of the things that, you know, you may look at when it comes to addressing the bargaining power. There are situations in such that if you find that the bargaining power from the buyer is too high, okay, there are certain strategies that are actually possible for you to apply in that context to ensure that you are able to mitigate that particular high power of buyer. All right, I think you will learn later on, okay, the detail of those particular strategy. So we are also talking about suppliers similarly. So these are the kind of whether your supplier is powerful than you or not. If they are more powerful, then you tend to actually lose or tend to be at the losing end. But if you are able to create and manage this particular powerful supplier, then you will have the advantage. All right. I want you to understand the concept first. Later on, then we will go into detail. As we move on from one particular chapter to another, okay, you will study in detail on the components that we have actually go through here. All right. So we did talk about the substitutes. And we did talk about the intensity of the rivalry just now is all because of that particular 4 elements just now, right? Let's open this for a discussion. How do you think the external influence just now, we're talking about internet and digital technologies, would affect your competitive forces? Let's discuss on this. Apakah benda lah, macam mana lah benda Allah ni boleh? Any question? Any question? Hello kids, are you okay?
No, madam.
Okay, you all okay?
Yes, madam, yes.
All right. Okay. Basically, let's look at technology. How would technology affect you? Okay, for example, right? Look at the bookstore. Example of a bookstore. We used to have physical bookstore. All right. How does that particular internet and the digital technology affect this nature of business?
E-book.
E-book. All right. How would ebook actually affect the physical store?
People will read less physical book, so the physical orang tak belilah.
Okay, so you are saying that people tend to actually read, all right, more of the ebook rather than the hard copy book, isn't it? So how would that affect the incumbent? When I say incumbent means the existing player in the bookstore business who are selling hard copies now. Okay, how would it affect the incumbent? You are saying that not many people who are buying the physical book, right? The hard copy. People move towards ebook. So what next?
They produce.
Okay, some says they produce lesser book. What about you just now? What do you say? I want you to look at it holistically on every aspect. What about in terms of bargaining power of the buyer? Now, buyer, you are saying buyer tend to go for e-book, all right, rather than a physical book. Again, you have to look at how the external factors like aging population just now is actually also having influence on this. The age who are using e-book. If you ask me, I don't think so I can stand long reading e-book. I will end up buying the physical book. What about you? Can you stand long in reading that particular e-book?
For me, no.
Not really.
Not really, right? So to a certain extent, yes, e-book can be a threat, right? But to a certain extent, okay, the physical book still prevails in certain contexts. All right, so you need to understand that particular situation. Why? So that you can strategize on how you are going to leverage on this particular situation and still be able to get your customers. So that's why you see that nowadays, some bookstores, yes, they still have, for example, MPH, they still have physical store, but they start to close down some of those physical stores. And they start embarking into online business, using internet. So they have both. That's how they leverage on this particular situation, and they are trying to actually gain the market from two segments. One, those who still go for the physical store, and like you said, they start reducing their production of the physical book, okay, and they start to have more of e-book kind of sales. But there are also certain types of books, they still maintain selling it hard copy. However, the way that they are selling it is different. That's online. Okay, they still sell the physical book, but instead of selling it at the physical store, they sell it online. You see how they are trying to leverage on this particular use of internet and technologies, because this affects their competitive advantage. If they do not transform because of the influence of this digital technology, I don't think so, okay, MPH would survive. And when this happens, internally, later on we'll touch on internal, okay, dia akan touch on the overall picture of the business first, then indirectly after that, the external factors will definitely have effect on the internal factors. Why do I say that? When you are changing from selling through a physical store and now converting it into online, definitely that you are going to close down some of the physical stores because of the technology just now. And but one thing about it is that your market gets wider. Perhaps your physical store will be used as a warehouse. For whoever wants to buy or purchase it from you physically, they just go to the warehouse. All right, or any other physical outlet that are still open. But what you get from here when you are able to leverage on this is you are able to get new market that may come from other countries. Okay, the market will not just coming from other states. Let's say if you're in KL, your MPH, you can actually sell throughout Malaysia. Not just Malaysia, but throughout the world as well. So this is where you could actually leverage on this particular use of technology. How would it affect internally will be, all right, your employees that you actually hire before this will need to be agile. That means able to adapt with the new environment. Okay, they need to be able to understand how the new process works, the new procedures, and the new skills is actually required when it comes to digital technologies and internet. All right, so this is how it would actually influence the whole of your business operations. Sometimes when the threat of substitutes that's high can be lower, you know, these are the kind of things that you need to actually look at. And perhaps with the use of the technology, okay, with lesser physical store, you'll be able to reduce part of the price and you'll be able to actually accommodate the bargaining power of the buyers who wants it to be cheaper. So by using this technology, perhaps you are able to make the books cheaper in that sense, because buyer can actually buy from you directly. Okay. And you may use also some industry analysis to actually look at this particular scenario. Doesn't mean that whatever decision that you have made by using the Potter's 5 forces model, will give you a concrete facts for you to actually move towards certain strategy. Be careful, Not all the time that you must consider to produce at a lower price. Remember, we are playing with what? Human factor as well. There are situations whereby, in certain scenarios or in certain market, in certain demographic, social, cultural areas, right? People doesn't want to go for low price. To them, low price is considered as low quality. So this is where you need to understand the behavior of your customers, right? So be careful when you say that, oh, we can reduce this and we can actually sell it cheaper. Not all the time selling cheaper is actually accepted by customers. It depends on what type of customers you are dealing with. So be careful. For those who carry status, all right, there are some customers who actually like to be associated with status. A high price would mean that they are rich, all right? So these are the kind of customers you can't sell them at a lower price. All right, to them, low price considered as without quality. So that's why even if you're talking about physical books just now, some books you need to produce it with hard copy and good papers. You have a different target market for that. And once there are also some books which you will actually produce in paperbacks, and you have a different target market for that. And the quality of the printing might not be the same with the one that you produce in hard copy and with a high quality papers, because it definitely have a difference in terms of the price and the kind of production process that they have to go through it will not be the same as well. All right, for you to cater for this, and that's the reason why if you go deeper into how you are going to actually look at in terms of the cost, that's where you will see, okay, you need to look at the overhead cost between this particular production of the two products. This one is actually related to EMA, and that's where ABC costing or non-ABC costing plays an important role. Okay, you can go into detail to that, but I'm not going to go into detail in your MA because you are no longer doing that. But remember, all these are related. Okay. In the certain context, okay, your 5 forces is assuming of the zero-sum game. What does this mean? What does it mean by zero-sum game? This is an assumption, okay, made when using 5 forces. What does it mean?
Is it one win, one loss?
Yes, we are not talking about win-win situation for both parties. Okay, when you use 5 forces analysis, okay, the tendency to have one person losing and only another person wins is there, because that's the assumption that's why you see, okay, you wouldn't want someone to replace your product, so definitely you want only you to actually, capture this market segment. You don't want other people to capture them. So once we're able to capture that market, another person cannot enter. So that's what it meant by the zero-sum game. So if you're able to capture the market but another person cannot capture it, that means you get the gain, that particular person doesn't gain anything from it. All right? But in the actual practice, okay, when you talk about the actual practice, what actually most professional bodies are promoting is that you need to ensure that your organization conform to performance. Okay, you also perform, you also conform. What does it mean by that? Yes, you need to perform well. Yes, you need to follow rules and regulations and ethical values as well. All right. You don't want that when you compete with your competitor, you throw them out of the business. That's not how it should work. It should be a healthy competition between the competitors, helping one another in that sense. And basically, okay, once you compete healthily, both companies will be able to stand strong in the market. You can wall up, you can monopolize. It's not good. All right. So it's good that you actually share them together, because sometimes, okay, the kind of resources that you have may help you to cater towards certain market segment, but you don't have resources that cater for another different market segment. That's where you can see that when you compete with a competitor, you will find that, yes, your competitor may compete in another kind of market segment, which, okay, you might compete in the same, but there are also in situations whereby you also go have other market segments. So this is where, okay, you must ensure that both companies, okay, both competitor, when you compete, okay, is always a healthy competition. You cannot actually do something that is unethical that makes another person collapse. Okay, you must always remember that. So this is some of the example whereby, okay, you can actually extend the value of the 5 forces by looking into the vertical dimension and horizontal dimension of this particular Porter's 5 forces in ensuring that, all right, you compete healthily. Like what you say here, okay, vertical dimension is between the suppliers and customer. So you need to have good negotiation and you need to have, you know, good relationship so that both benefit from this. And when it talks about horizontal dimension, perhaps when it comes to substitutes, instead of too much substitutes, perhaps you may think of a complement. All right, producing something that complement your competitor, for example. All right, that would be a good competition. Okay, this is an example of that, the value net model. Okay, you're talking about, okay, between supplier customers. This one is between substitutors. We're talking about complementers. These are some of the aspects where you are able to create values, okay, among the industry players, okay, so that when the industry both basically, let's say you all the competitor that you have are performing well in the business, that will have a great impact on the economy of the country where these particular companies are located. All right, so that's the reason why you want to build up a good economic system that enables people to compete healthily. And when they are able to compete healthily, all the companies, okay, able to perform. Once they're able to perform, they're able to contribute more to the society. All right, so when I say contributing more to the society, if you still remember about the sustainability, actually, you know, expect that people, especially human, to have that kind of attitude. Definitely, there are some who actually are greedy. So these are the kind of things that you need to actually address. All right. It's good to be true, I would say, but it would be nice if everyone is like that, isn't it? So basically, you can perform some industry analysis, okay, to look into the sources of your profitability, where it comes from, and you are working. Basically, it's understanding the whole business, what it is all about. That means looking at it from a bigger perspective and detail it out into the context of internal perspective. So that's why you need to actually understand the business both from its quantitative factors and also the qualitative factors as well. For example, all right, looking at the products that you are producing, for example, in the sense of selling medical products. If you're talking about a pharmacy, all right, remember, doesn't mean that when you are a pharmacy, okay, you will only sell your medication at certain prices. Remember, as a pharmaceutical industry, they have to also consider the qualitative aspect as well. There are certain type of pharmaceutical industry who only supply products for certain type of diseases, which actually, okay, the medication is not cheap, but it doesn't give them a profit in that sense. However, they still produce it and expect that other sales would help to cover that cost. Why do they still do that? Because of the qualitative factors just now, which is we're talking about human being. We're talking about survival of a human. Okay, so you must have a heart there as well. Okay, not just about wanting to have profit and you forgot about your nature good self who actually need to help others as well. All right, so this is what we call as corporate citizenship. That means, what it means is that a pharmaceutical industry should actually understand their responsibility in terms of the corporate citizenship. It means not just that I sell my medicine and get profit out of it, I should also sell medicine even though I have to incur loss for that particular medicine. Because why? There are still people who are in need of it. If I don't produce it, then that particular people will not survive. All right, they will die without that particular medication, especially for rare diseases. All right, so only certain pharmaceutical industry produce that medication is expensive. So sometimes because of the corporate citizenship, that means their responsibility to the whole society or the citizen, that they plan to just produce it and never mind about the loss as long as they are able to contribute to the society, right? So these are some of the things that you need to actually think of upfront when it comes to analyzing the industry. All right, all aspects that need to be looked at. And the implication of your decisions on your stakeholders need to be taken into consideration as well. Okay, when we talk about doing some analysis, you need to know the strategic groups within the industry. What does it mean by strategic groups within the industry? These are the assumptions that you will have to make when it comes to looking at the strategic groups within the industry. Means you make an assumption that no two firms are totally different. All right, no two firms are exactly the same. So these are the kind of assumptions that you need to actually understand when it comes to looking at the strategic groups. All right. Why do I say that? Because sometimes we can share the same strategy, but some of it may work on you, but some may not work on you. All right. Let's say if I were to actually, let's say I have a business, okay, similar to my friend, Dr. Balkish, basically, all right, who are doing the same kind of business. But when we look at I would assume that, all right, even though we have similar nature of business, all right, we may not be the same. The type of people who's actually working in her organization and my organization will not be the same. All right. So the kind of focus and the way that we do things in the organization, all right, may not be the same as well. Okay? Even though in a bigger context, we look the same. All right. And that's where you need to understand, because the kind of product that she is producing and I'm producing, okay, may look the same, but it may be different in certain contexts. Perhaps my features may be less sophisticated than her features of a product, because her focus is differentiation and my focus is actually low cost. However, the nature of product will still be the same, but our target market is different. Okay, so you need to understand who these strategic groups are in that particular industry. You understand that?
Yes, madam.
Okay.
Yes, madam.
Yes.
Okay. Why do you think that strategic groups can be a good analytical tools? If you can when I say identifying these strategic groups, we are talking about the stakeholders just now. All right. So your stakeholders can be many, but who are important to you? Have a look at them and see how they can actually influence how you operate. And that is actually very crucial. Why? Because once you understand your environment and who they are and around you, you'll be able to come up with a better strategy. Okay, so that's the reason why you need to look at these strategic groups. Basically, as we are talking about your main stakeholders. Bila kata main stakeholders, you're talking about people who have influence on your organization, and whatever that you decide can have influence on them. All right. So these are your stakeholders. So when you explain strategic groups, you need to relate it to the term stakeholders. Then you'll be able to see a clearer picture on who they are in the context of your industry. Once you know that, then you will be able to actually think of a way of how you can have a better strategy for sustainability. Okay, so basically, when you look at these particular strategic groups here, okay, what it means is that you can see on the top here, okay, where you have a higher price. And when you talk about the breadth of the product line, maybe not many. And what they put up here is Ferrari, Lamborghini, Porsche. Why? Higher price, customer may not be many. And these are among the strategic group in this particular industry of luxury cars, right? And you also have, which is lower price, okay, even though it doesn't have a much of product line, but with a low prices, okay, you are able to cater those, okay, who are in need of a basic car, like Tata Motors or Chile, right? Kalau kita dekat Malaysia, what we can see is that there are people who purchase, all right, Asia, there are people who purchase, okay, Myvi, all right. There are also people who purchase what? Luxury cars like Lexus, all right, Mercedes, BMW, or even Porsche or Lamborghini. All right, so you need to look at these particular strategic groups and look at the industry that you are in. And if you are in the automobile industry, look at your focus. Which particular segment that you may want to actually cater for. And once you know that segment, you will know who your competitors are. If you decided to produce a luxury cars, this will be your competitor. If you decided to produce and not to say it's a luxury, but affordable cars, I would say these are your competitors inside this particular chart. All right. So all this depending on who your strategic groups that you have already identified just now. All right. Sadaqallahul Azim. Finally, we come to the end. I know you're tired. I know I didn't give you a break, but what's more important is that, okay, we finished slightly earlier. That will cover your break. Okay. So any question? Any question?
No, madam.
I know you say no. Memang tak ada soalannya. Total shutdown dah ke ni? Ni mesti total shutdown ni. Right. Okay, I'll stop sharing. Right. Basically, oh, bagus you all full attendance hari ni.